Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and this one is going to be slightly different because this is really more of a comparison video. I am technically calling it part 2 of my Siege Omega Supreme review, but really it's not that because we've already looked at Siege Omega Supreme. And this is an opportunity now to kind of see him, this big lad, compared to another version of Omega Supreme, that being this big lad, the Wei Jiang Ultima Guard. And the reason I wanted to compare these two is because taxes in Omega Supreme in my neck of the woods is $288. This guy, the Wei Jiang Ultima Guard, clocked in, shipping, all expenses, all taxes, all everything at $293. That's a difference of only about $5. And I feel like it is part of a trend that we're beginning to see where third party, which was always traditionally far more expensive than regular mainline, is all of a sudden kind of falling in line with those same prices. I don't know if it's a case of mainline is increasing their costs or their prices, or if it's that third party is decreasing theirs. I didn't think it was fair to compare Omega Supreme to Terminus Giganticus because that thing is significantly more expensive, and as such it probably should be held at a higher standard. Indeed, I think that one is most intended for MP collectors. Then we have DX9's Gabriel, who at the time he was released I believe was $279.99 US, although that's changed recently. Nevertheless, while we will touch on that, we're going to dive in deep and compare everything about these two guys in the latest GotBot True review. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, that's right, man, hit that notification bell, please, because it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up on the channel, from stop motions to countdowns to reviews like these, to comparisons like these. Check out Machinery of Man, the Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, and the Autobot family, and have a look for me everywhere across social media. And here we have Siege Omega Supreme, who is quite excellent, and Wei Jiang's Ultima Guard, who is quite excellent. Now these are two kind of very different takes on Omega Supreme. One of course is official, the other is a third-party representation. And these two are very close in price, in cost to consumers. So what do you get when you kind of compare apples to apples? Which one is better, or are they about the same? Well, you know what? We're going to look at their paint apps, we're going to look at their posability, we're going to look at their alt mode, their transformations, we're going to even look at the accessories that come with them. We're going to compare everything across the board with these two, and we're even now going to just throw in DX9's Gabriel, because there's been a little bit of a change in that one as of recent. Anyway, let's head over to the table and dive right into it all. Okay, so I hope that this is going to work out the way I have it envisioned in my head, although usually the way I envision things in my head is not how it plays out in real life. Nevertheless, let me kind of give the setup here. Now that we're at the table, now that you can see Siege Omega Supreme standing side by side with the Wei Jiang Ultima Guard, what kind of my mindset was and what kind of wrinkle has sort of thrown a kink into the works and how we're going to incorporate it. First things first, both of these guys are fantastic iterations of Omega Supreme. They are excellent figures, whichever one you choose. The question we're looking at here is which one actually gives you the biggest bang for your buck. Why are we comparing these two? Because these two are so close in cost to one another that it's comparing apples to apples. Originally, I was not going to include DX9's Gabriel because it clocked in at a significantly higher price, and I was not going to include Fans Toys Terminus Giganticus because it too clocked in at an even higher price. Again, it was definitely the highest of the four iterations of a Titan-ish sized Omega Supreme that we have. However, things have slightly changed a little bit. While we're still going to compare apples to apples with these two guys, we're now going to discuss Gabriel because recently pre-orders for him have gone up again, I guess a second run, and the price has significantly dropped. Now, even with conversion, he is right on par with the cost of these two guys, which is somewhere around $290 Canadian. He has to be now in the mix, in the conversation. Terminus Giganticus will not be in the conversation. He won't be in it for two reasons. One, because he is not a kind of mainline collection representation of Omega Supreme. He is, I think, really intended to be the closest thing that we could have to a masterpiece representation of Omega Supreme. So he should be held at a different standard and a different level. He is also still significantly more expensive. So again, because his cost is higher, his value should be higher. We can't really compare him here because it's not fair when we look at what you would have to invest as a collector for him. We're going to kind of go through these guys very meticulously. We're going to see who comes out on top in the end, with the knowledge that whichever one you choose, this is really just for fun, but this is with the knowledge that whichever one you choose to be your Omega Supreme, there's not a wrong choice here. We have these two on hand. Unfortunately, we do not have Gabriel on hand, but I know enough about him that I'm pretty certain that I can make comments as we go along here, and sometimes he's even going to win some of the little checkmark votes here. Who knows? Maybe the one who's missing will be just the guy to come out on top as the best of the three in terms of your biggest bang for your buck. Both of these guys, as you can see right now, are able to pull off like a nice articulation. But we're going to kind of start from brass tacks, and brass tacks is the accessories. And to start us off here, we have the accompanying figure, because Siege Omega Supreme comes with the Micromaster Countdown. His articulation is a little lackluster. His legs can go forward and back. They can kind of do the splits, like it goes out so far. He has a bend at the knee. The arms can only go out about as far as they are there. He does have a nice little conversion. He does have a peg in his chest, so he could be used as like a, you know, a weaponizer thing. Go with that whole gimmick, so to speak. I don't know. He's a touch above his G1 version. You know, it is what it is. He's tiny. If you know, and I said this in the Siege Omega review recently, if you know the powertrain character from the Off-Road Patrol, then Countdown pretty much works the same as that in terms of his robot articulation. Like, it's okay, but it could be better. Then Wei Jiang comes with the character known as Doc. We only saw him in, I think, one episode in G1. He never had an alt mode, and this guy doesn't have an alt mode, but his articulation is stupendous. His articulation is a 10, and he's about the height of a Voyager, probably with the mass of a Deluxe. Which one would you say? Oh, by the way, DX9 here, Gabriel, would not be in the running. There is no extra figure with Gabriel. I think the winner is the bigger, better articulated Wei Jiang offering, so I'm going to give them the point. However, somebody might make the argument that, yeah, but the Wei Jiang figure can't transform, and Countdown can. So he automatically wins because he does have two modes. I could see that argument, but me personally, I'm going to give the point here to Wei Jiang. That's not the only accessories we have. Siege comes with a number of blast effects. 5 make this huge contraption up. That will go attached to his like cannon arm. And we have these other two little pieces. They can go on multiple ports. And that's the thing about Siege Omega, is that you can take this apart to become 5. So altogether there's what, 7 blast effects? I think the blast effects are fantastic. They really help for displays. They help for playability. I love them. They're not fancy accessories to add, but they're worthwhile accessories to add. Conversely, Gabriel only comes with a sticker sheet. No extra accessories. Apparently he has an extra face, but evidently that's hit or miss if it's actually in the box. So we're going to say that the DX9 Gabriel really only comes with decals, stickers, whatever you want to call them, which barely counts as accessories. So again, kind of out when it comes to accessories. Wei Jiang, however, comes with this big display stand and blast effect. The blast effect again goes with his cannon. The display stand is intended to hold the shuttle. Now, it is ratcheted up here, but I find the ratchet, it's not really strong enough to hold it unless you have it kind of weighted and balanced exactly well. So, when it comes to the accessories, outside of the included figure, I think that the Siege gets the point this time around. If you're keeping score, we have 1 for Ultima Guard, 1 for Siege, nothing yet for DX9. And here we have the two big boys. They are front on to us, and when I look at them, I feel like in terms of the kind of detailing and the overall silhouette for me, I feel like straight on, I think the Wei Jiang captures the look of the traditional G1 Omega Supreme better than the Siege. Not that the Siege doesn't look like Omega Supreme, but it's definitely a little bit stylized. Here's the thing, with the Ultima Guard version, I painstakingly went through all of the drawn in detail of the G1 animation and this guy, and it's pretty much accurate. To be fair, however, DX9 has a kind of, I'm going to say more minimalist approach to what it has molded in for detail, but it's all perfectly accurate as well, except that the kind of chest piece on the DX9 version might be a little more narrow than some people would like. Kind of like the Siege one might be a little more narrow than some people would like. I feel like the Wei Jiang and Terminus Giganticus, to be fair, both have kind of captured that upper chest better. So front on, I kind of gotta give it silhouette-wise to Ultima Guard when it comes to all three. However, DX9 is a very close second. That being said, the lower shin pieces on the DX9 are perfect to the animation. They look almost like flared out bell bottoms, and the Wei Jiang version kind of has that flare a little bit. It's accurate to the animation, although I never particularly liked that look. The look on the Siege is very similar to what we have with Terminus Giganticus. The yellow piece is there, but it's more straight up and down, and that is actually stylized, not quite as accurate. The shoulders on Gabriel and on the Wei Jiang one are perfectly animation accurate. I would say Gabriel takes it a little bit there. The shoulders on Siege are stylized and smaller. I said this in the review that I felt like they were maybe a little bit too small. What about side-on profile? Side-on, there's no doubt that the Siege is much cleaner. Incredibly cleaner. To be fair, the DX9 is also very clean from a side-on profile. Maybe even cleaner than the Siege. What about back-on? From the back, I've got to give it to DX9. Gabriel is the clear winner from the back. It is, again, pretty minimalist, but it is the most accurate from back on. Wei Jiang is a very close second. Very close second. Siege is more stylized. You see the little red triangle, not triangle things, arrow things that are down near his ankles. They shouldn't be red, they should be yellow like they are on the Wei Jiang version. You see the red pieces there kind of on the back of his knees. I guess that's fine, that doesn't matter. We do have the yellow kind of on the upper thigh on both, so that's accurate. But the overall shape of the backpack, looking more like a thruster pack, is better captured by Wei Jiang. It's best captured by Gabriel. Although the backpack of Siege is fine, it is highly stylized. Next side. On this side, I give it to Ultima Guard. I have to say from this side, I'm giving it to him. Why am I giving it to him from this side? Because of his forearm. The way that his, I guess this is the top of the shuttle looks is extremely accurate. Plus, he has a piece there that I've actually put an Autobot symbol on that can come out and rotate around. So in shuttle mode, you can have the Autobot symbol that you choose to add, if you choose to add one. You can have it like facing the direction that seems correct in shuttle mode, and you could turn it around and have it facing the direction that seems correct in robot mode. I don't think you have that option with Gabriel. You do not even have an Autobot symbol on that part of the arm with the Siege Omega, though it should be there. Then we get to the face sculpt, and the face sculpt of the Wei Jiang Ultima Guard is good. The lines are mostly harsh or hard lines, except for kind of down by his lips, and that might be a little bit off. The head sculpt for Siege over here, if we get in a little bit closer to him, is quintessentially Omega Supreme, even with the yellow eyes. So who overall gets the point for accuracy in overall look? The face sculpt, by the way, on the DX9 Gabriel is good, but it, like, all of the lines on it feel soft to me. Like, it feels like, it's one of those things, like, I look at it and I think, there's something off here, but I don't know exactly what it is. I think the one who captures the look the best is Ultima Guard. I'm going to give him the point. That being said, the Siege easily has the most molded detail of the three, and he is the most interesting to look at. So if you're okay with a slightly stylized look, but something that has so much molded in detail that it's just aesthetically interesting to look at, then definitely go with Siege. Where does DX9 fall into it? It almost wanted to go accurate to a fault. The only thing that it has above these two in terms of its looks that beats these two hands down is that it's slathered in paint. Of course, that being said, not only is it slathered in paint, but it is also the only one on which you have to apply stickers. If you like applying stickers, maybe Gabriel is for you. Neither of these guys have stickers to be applied. Kind of different for the Siege because traditional, you know, Titan class figures have always had sticker sheets. Not this time around, and I think it actually benefits Omega Supreme that he is just in fact paint. What about lights and sound? Well, Gabriel has a light in his two hand pieces, his two blaster pieces. The Siege has no lights or sound. The Wei Jiang Ultima Guard, I showed it when I looked at the Everything Ultima Guard review. He has lights in his eyes, he has lights in his hand, he has lights in, I think, his chest. He has a voice clip that has 3 or 4 Omega phrases. So for lights and sound, it has to go for DX9's Gabriel. Plus the tank is motorized in base mode. It's the only one of the three that has a motorized tank. So lights and sound, it goes to Wei Jiang's Ultima Guard. Okay, let's get into the articulation, and the very first thing that we'll talk about actually is the claw hand. Gabriel and Siege have the same joints, where they have one at the base and then one kind of midway down the finger, I suppose we'll say. I'll sort of show that now. Let me get in here. We have a hinge here and we have one down here. With Ultima Guard, we have a hinge up here and then one right here and one down here. But the one right there on a couple of his finger claws is really scary tight. So while he has them, they're a bit iffy to move, at least on my copy. Maybe somebody else's, they're not toleranced exactly the same, but it's like a super duper heavy ratchet. Nevertheless, it does have that point of articulation, which beats out this guy, and it does beat out DX9's Gabriel. But we're going to start from the top and work our way down through the articulation for the rest of this. The head on both is pretty good. On this guy can go forward and left and right. We already saw it in his review. On his, again, it can go a little forward, left and right. You do have to get this up out of the way because he actually has his tank cannon on the back of his head. The little tiny cannon here is like a false piece. The arms on both of these guys go all the way out on ratchets. They can rotate forward and back. Both are hindered by the wing pieces. DX9 Gabriel's head is able to lift up, look up, and look down. He easily has the best head articulation. His arms also can go forward and back and out to the side. His shoulder pad is on like a universal, so it moves independently of the arm if you need it to. That's a nice feature that he has. Both of these guys have bicep swivels, so does Gabriel. Both of these guys have waist swivels that are on clicky ratchets, but they move nicely. Gabriel also has a waist swivel, but his is super duper heavy. All three can do the splits for days. All three can kick forward. I would venture to say to you that one of these two probably kicks forward a little higher than Gabriel. All three of them kick back just fine. All three have 90 degrees or better at the knee. All three have ankle tilt left and right. In terms of forward and backward, Wei Jiang has a little bit of that, but not a ton, and he's the only one that has a little bit of that. The only one I think that has an actual fully dedicated thigh swivel, rather than kind of having it built in the hip joint, is the Siege Omega. I kind of like the hip flaps on the side and front and back of DX9's Gabriel and the Wei Jiang guy, because it makes the pelvis look, I don't know, cleaner. I feel like when I look down at the pelvis here, like the hips are way out and something should be there to cover it, mask it, I don't know. But if that was going to limit the articulation, then, you know, leave the pelvis like it is. It just doesn't look quite as clean to me, if that makes sense. Gabriel only opens up his chest pieces for transformation. This guy opens them to show in, like, molded in detail. Rockets, this guy opens them to show the little blasters that this guy already just naturally has out. And I think the blasters light up on Ultima Guard. I can't speak for the DX9 version, but for these guys, both of them have beyond amazing stability and balance. They're balanced tremendously well. Honestly, I don't know if Gabriel can do quite this pose because I don't have him in hand. I'm giving both of these guys a point. This speaks volumes for their articulation, their balance, and their posability. Both excellent figures. And here they both are with their arch nemesis, Devastator. And both Gabriel and the Wei Jiang one are a bit bigger than the Siege. So both of them would kind of work with Devastator, but be just like a touch too big. The Siege one gets the point because it is perfectly scaled with Devastator. The other two are close, they're passable, but the Siege one is perfect. And when we compare Omega Supreme to Metroplex and to Titan's Return Fortress Maximus, the Siege one is slightly smaller, which I think also makes sense because Omega Supreme, as huge as he is, I don't think he was quite as big as Metroplex, although now I'm sure there are many people out there who will say, hey, I'll get this as my Omega Supreme. I'll get the, you know, Titan class Metroplex as Metroplex, and I'll get that newly announced Fans Toys 4-foot crazy monstrosity, assuming it ever actually gets fully made, as my Fort Max. Congratulations to you if you got the room and the funds for that. This works fine for me. I'm good. Like, this takes up enough real estate on the shelf in my home. I'm just saying. So here, while I think that the Wei Jiang offering, being the same size, works fine. I mean, you could believe that all three of these bases would be just three big bases. I'm cool with that. Scale-wise, the Siege one is probably a little more accurate. For that reason, I have to give the point to Siege. And finally, in robot mode, the last thing is the actual mass. What it is you're paying for. I can't speak to Gabriel here. Unfortunately, and this is a couple of times, like Gabriel right now has no points. Not because it's like not worthy of having them, but because I can't give Gabriel certain points for certain things if I don't have it here and can't speak to it firsthand. Case in point, mass and weight. I know that Gabriel is hefty, but I don't know how hefty in comparison to the two of these guys. As such, the Siege Omega, when I have all of his bits and pieces in hand and I weigh him, he comes out to be somewhere around 6 pounds. The Wei Jiang, with all of his accessories and the extra character and all of his bits and pieces and everything, comes out to be 11 pounds. You are getting 5 more pounds of mass, of plastic quantity with the Wei Jiang offering. I have to give the point to Wei Jiang. Now, while I say I'm giving the point to Wei Jiang because you're physically getting more mass, honestly, it's a bit easier to handle the siege run because it's not quite as heavy, and it is still quite dense because the weight of the siege run, and this is where it gets interesting, though he's a little bit smaller than, say, Metroplex and Fort Max, he's about the same weight. Like, Metroplex weighs less than Omega Supreme. Fort Max weighs about the same as Omega Supreme. Yet Omega Supreme is smaller. He has that same plastic weight, except it's compacted just a little bit, and I think it's to his credit because Siege Omega feels super duper solid as well. He might not have the mass of the Wei Jiang, but honestly both of them feel super solid. You saw the pose that they could both pull off, and I'm telling you now, they both pulled off with no problem at all. Now, I'm not going to show the transformations, I've already done that in each of their reviews, but we will look at the base modes and kind of add to the score there. And right now, if you're keeping track, Wei Jiang has 5 points, Siege has 4 points, Gabriel has no points yet. But again, remember, we can only kind of talk about Gabriel in passing. Nevertheless, that's where the score stands. It's neck and neck and very close. Let's get these guys into their alt modes and do a comparison that way. And by the way, while on our way to looking at the kind of 2 base modes of these big lads, we have a fan mode. This is by way of the Siege Omega Supreme, and it's kind of a take on the rocket base, or maybe like a mobile version thereof. And it works with countdown. I forgot to mention too that this whole piece here, it can like spin around. There's like all 3 can move because there's a joint in right there. I didn't mention that, but it can. Also the I guess top of the shuttle, it can extend as well. I didn't mention those 2 things in articulation. It doesn't really change anything, but it's a couple of extra things it can do, I suppose. This is cool. It is something that I wanted to show because it shows kind of additional playability, besides for the fact that he's covered in like 5mm ports on his arms and up right there on his shoulder, for example, where you can put weaponizers and anything that has a 5mm peg. Right? You know, any of the Battle Masters or any of the Micromasters, any of the weaponizer parts can all go added to this guy. But this is just another layer of playability that he has, and that kind of versatility gives him another point, which means right now both of these guys are tied. And I apologize for our positioning here, but as you can imagine, it's very difficult to get both of these guys on camera at the same time in their base mode. And this is a very telling image. The Wei Jiang Ultima Guard looks significantly larger when in base mode, but there's also a lot of like dead space because the track is so huge. Nevertheless, there is a track going around. The tank that's on that track is a little iffy, but we'll talk about that in a minute. When it comes to the 2 tracks, the Wei Jiang might be a little bit too big, the Siege might be a little bit too small. And while the Siege does have third-party extenders that are available, honestly, when we throw Gabriel in the mix, I think that his track and the way that it unfurls is the most accurate. So point to Gabriel. As a matter of fact, in conjunction with that, when we talk about the transformation overall, the Siege one is fine, it's good, it's a great transformation. The Wei Jiang is also a great transformation. But I think that the ingenious nature of how the legs and the, say, bridge pieces are handled by Gabriel, as well as how the arms are handled. You know, when you put the arms on in robot mode, they're easy to get on because it's almost like a combiner war sort of gimmick to putting them on. And then when you put them together as a shuttle, it's a great shuttle. Fantastic transformation. So in terms of the conversion, Gabriel also gets the point. These 2 are excellent, but Gabriel is a little bit better in terms of the overall engineering. Now, we've got the track out of the way. We've got the engineering kind of out of the way. What about the 2 tanks? Well, the tank of the Siege is kind of over on the wrong wrong side there. So hold on, I'm going to put that over here on the right side. There. Now it's kind of on the right side where we want it. Looking at the tank of the Siege, it's big. It looks big on the track. The tank for Wei Jiang's fits the track, but like the turret section looks oversized for the small tank body. That being said, the small tank body is really just the housing for the motorized gimmick as far as I'm concerned. In terms of accuracy to the look of the G1, Gabriel wins again. The Siege one is good. It embodies the G1 all right, but the way the turret kind of comes up and covers his face, you can't really move the tank at all. With the Ultima Guard one, you can turn the face around and the entire turret moves around and goes up and down. But with Gabriel, you get a hefty tank that looks G1, and the way that the turret is done is that you can turn the face around, but like there's even a little tab at the top of Gabriel's head that you flick up, and that allows you to turn the face around. It's, again, a small thing, but it's brilliant. I'm giving the tank to Gabriel. Gabriel coming on strong here now, right? Then we get to the shuttles. The shuttle for Gabriel is all right. It's okay. But then we have these two shuttles. And as you can see, the Siege one is very tall. I think that the conversion for the arms is unique. It's different than what we would normally expect for the shuttle. But it's definitely an out of proportion shuttle. I think that the Wei Jiang shuttle, though more traditional, is probably the best. We can even with that one. And you can see I have the other, what's the word I'm looking for? Joints used. The ones that I said were super tight, I have those used so that he can stay on his stand. But I think that shuttle is more in proportion. I like that it's a solid orange. I'm going to give the shuttle to Wei Jiang. By the way, I do want to point one thing out that I missed during the conversion of Siege, so we're going to focus on him for just a moment. And pardon this little aside, but you will notice down by his left, I'll say shin, we now have unfurled from his thigh a ramp that has a yellow and gray piece. I did not remember to have those turned out during the transformation, but they're supposed to be out, and they kind of resemble, I guess, those yellow pieces that were used on the base in the G1. And I think most people know what I'm talking about there. When we look at Ultima Guard, in terms of those yellow pieces, you can see how I have them flipped out, but like it's not correct. It's not the way they should be. Honestly, when it comes to the actual like base, I really think that Gabriel probably takes that as well. Not that there's anything wrong with the Siege base mode or the Wei Jiang base mode, but I think out of all three, Gabriel has to take the physical base mode the best. In terms of just these two, I personally like the Ultima Guard base mode better. But, of course, that's also the one I own, so I'm obviously biased. I think if I was somebody who had waited and was choosing Siege as my Omega, I would be very pleased because he does have that playability. By the way, those yellow pieces on the legs of Siege, they also open up to accommodate Micromasters. We know that we can open parts on the shuttle to accommodate Micromasters. We know, if you have seen the review, we know that we have connection pieces that look like they will connect with Earthrise. We have connection points that harken back to Titan's Return, so there's forward, backward capability, interaction with Micromasters. Like, I would be very happy with this because of everything that he can interact with. However, if I had the Siege, I would also feel like I need to at least get the track extenders. And that's fine, that's cool, but I like, if I'm comparing apples to apples here and saying these guys are pretty much the same price, I don't have to buy any add-on kits or anything for the Ultima Guard. I do need to buy add-on kits for Siege Omega to get him the way I want him. I don't think I would have to buy any sort of add-on kits or anything for DX9's Gabriel either. I think he is just fine as he is. What is our final score? Remember what I said at the beginning of all this, there is no right or wrong answer here. Honestly, all three of these, even Terminus Giganticus, who's on a different level, all of them are fantastic in their own way. None of them are perfect, but all of them are fantastic in their own way. Final scores that I have. Now, you've probably scored it differently. I hope you've been playing along too, and let me know if you've scored it differently and been playing along. But for me, Wei Jiang, actually DX9's Gabriel has 1, 2, 3, 4. Siege Omega Supreme has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Wei Jiang's Ultima Guard has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Winner just by a hair is Ultima Guard. That being said, had I had Gabriel in hand, would any of these scores have been differently? I don't know. But all of them, at a 4, 5, and a 6 points, they're all honestly very neck and neck. Excellent, excellent figures. Boy, is Omega Supreme one lucky lad to have so many great versions of himself. And here we are once again. Now, what can we say first and foremost here? Well, you know what? The Siege Omega is definitely, from all the options available, he is definitely still the most cost effective. Even if only barely. Here's the thing. They each have strengths and they each have weaknesses. If we look at the Siege, its strength is that its weight isn't too much weight. It balances well. All of the joints feel great. They're not tolerance too tight. They're not tolerance too loose. The transformation is pretty interesting in certain parts, logical in others, although admittedly his tank, for me, leaves a little something to be desired. I really wish the turret worked out better than it did. But that's a personal gripe, and perhaps you don't feel that way. I also wish that in his alt mode, he had like a bigger track. There's something that seems off about that to me. However, the coloration, for the most part, is okay, except for that chest piece and the eyes. And the materials used, the construction is very, very good. It's even kind of a nice, cool little nod that we include Countdown. When we look at Wei Jiang's Ultima Guard, the materials are impeccable. They're fantastic. All of the ratchets are heavy, clicky ratchets, although that's not always to his benefit. There are times when it would be nice if the ratchet was a bit of a softer ratchet, something a little nicer than what we got. The transformation again for this guy is pretty great for the most part, although the pieces that wrap around his lower legs are indeed a nuisance. There's no doubt about it. I do love the coloration, and I personally like the deeper blue, yellow better on Ultima Guard, though some might like the lighter yellow better on this guy. While I appreciate that Ultima Guard has chest, I guess, blasters that open, this guy already has chest blasters, and his chest piece is open for missiles. It's cool. I like the face sculpt, as does Starscream Wife, like the face sculpt on the Siege one a little bit better because it is quintessentially Omega Supreme, although the face sculpt on the Wei Jiang one is also nice. The only thing is, with the Siege one, while the face sculpt is really nice, the head feels a little bit too small. Like, it feels a little out of proportion. In terms of the accessories, we get excellent blast effects with this guy, as well as Countdown. There you go. Which is nice, but we get like a full-fledged like Voyager height figure with Ultima Guard in dock. Now, he doesn't transform, but he is articulated tremendously well. We get a flight stand for the shuttle. We get, again, blast effects if you're so inclined. And this guy has lights and sounds and a voice chip, and he is a motorized tank, although some would argue that the tank is leaves something to be desired as well. Maybe neither of them really strike with the tank. I don't believe for a second that there's $5 worth of difference that gives this guy the extra weight and the electronics and whatnot. I feel like this guy, as excellent as he is one that if you're in for Omega Supreme, I mean, you can jump on him if you want, and I don't blame you if you do, but if you're on the fence and you're thinking, I think I might wait and see if Omega Supreme goes on sale, I can't really argue with that either, because I feel like for the price that he is, at least here in Canada, that maybe it would have been nice to include some electronics or some lights. That being said, it's not as clear-cut as that, because in the US, my understanding is these guys have not gone up in price, which means when we compare these two, it's not exactly apples to apples because the Wei Jiang is more expensive, and probably that extra does account for the extra bells and whistles that this guy has in that country. Then we have DX9's Gabriel, who was not a part of this conversation. And while his price is still ever so slightly still higher than these two, now clocking in at $179 in pre-orders, he can very easily kind of join the conversation as to which one is the biggest bang for your buck. For me personally, my Omega Supreme is Ultima Guard. However, I do think Gabriel is excellent. I do think Terminus Giganticus is excellent. And I do think that the Siege Omega is, admittedly, excellent. There's an argument to be made for them all. Let me know which Omega is your Omega of choice. You know, I love to hear from you guys, especially what you think about these two guys. And hey, throw in your thoughts if you want about Gabriel and even Terminus Giganticus. But keep in mind that the reason I didn't really include Terminus Giganticus here is because, just to reiterate, he is on a completely different level. He's a much higher price, and I think he's intended for a different type of collection, most notably a masterpiece collection. Anyway, that being said, that little disclaimer out of the way, you know I love to hear from you guys. I appreciate you coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. It is so very much appreciated. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, there is a donate link down in the description. Please, if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button. It helps me out so very much. I'm getting tired holding these guys. Don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every day you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams, at the stop motion premieres, or right here the old-fashioned way, inside the videos.